or since at least 2002, 2003, so sort of coming up to the sort of 20-year mark roughly. Microsoft MVP. I also run the Adelaide Microsoft M365 user group, as well now this year as the Microsoft Copilot user group here in Adelaide. Speaker and all that sort of stuff as well.
So today we will be discussing about file share migration, and we have prepared a quick agenda for the event. This is just a hands-on discussion, a healthy discussion, because we both having a different background on the SharePoint, and we will be sharing our experience, and let's see how much you can gain from this experience. And today we will be discussing these other topics for today's discussion. That we will first discuss about the productivity impact, why an organization move to SharePoint. So or moving data to file from file share to SharePoint, how it could be productive. So I will just ask you, Daniel, first, that if you can answer that, how is it productive for organizations to move data to SharePoint Online, or what you suggest, that what would be the impact of it?
It really depends on the organisation itself. I mean, generally speaking, yes, you're going to have more productivity moving to the cloud eventually. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's a little bit of a journey to get there. But in terms of actually the impact on the business as well, it should be fairly minor. In my opinion, it should be fairly minor. There can be times where it may be a little bit more impactful in other areas than others, but yeah.
So, and I want to share my perspective, because I have seen work with organizations, different customers who have archived data for ages, and they are unable to review it. And there could be some content which they need, but they don't know where it is located, because it's not easy to from file share to study that. So if and also managing those old hardwares and with additional cost, if you have already on the SharePoint. Yeah, I know that it's not easy for the organizations, because I work with the customers who are used to go through from File Explorer, and they have, I would say, multi-level of nested folders, which might not support it in the online systems now, because of the length of the URL, which is 400 characters. But when we did the migration for the users, they are not willing to. Once the data is moved to SharePoint or their OneDrives, then the impact which we have seen with the customers, they said that it's now getting very handy for us, because we can set the content easily, which is the main idea in SharePoint, that you have easy access to your content, and also you can access the content from anywhere, any device. If you have OneDrive installed on your phone,
Yeah.
easily access the content. You can share the content easily on fingertips. So it made it easier for them to share the content with their vendors, the clients, and also for the users. So so whenever I share these insights, that how it could be beneficial for you. So that is something which uh, at the start they are not willing to. And if they are using OneDrive or SharePoint and the sync lines, they also have Explorer View already available with
Yeah.
search
Yeah.
indexing, so which make it much healthier for searching the content. So here, one thing, Daniel, how you navigate to your document today? If it's in SharePoint or in OneDrive, how you navigate?
Well, I mean, me personally, it's all through portal.office.com. That's sort of my landing point now, which I think is just Microsoft365.com. I'm still attached to File Explorer. I must admit, I still have the sync going. I still do have some need for that. But that's mainly around sort of images and videos where I want to sort of process and cut and change and do those sort of things. Generally, I'm finding more for my Office documents, I'm online. I mean, I'm using O365 online, M365 Word, Excel, PowerPoint online. Getting to them very much 90% of the time, I would say, is now online. And from my devices, it's from my phone, it's from my laptop, it's from my PC, it's literally from everything. So it certainly has increased the ability to have productivity very, very well. What about yourself? How do you primarily access your files?
So actually, what I do normally, as we mentioned, that the file share is still the preferable way for me, because my files are in OneDrive. So I just search them
Hmm.
and navigate into the files, and also on SharePoint. I'll sometime if I know the location of the file, I prefer to navigate it. But most of the times in the company's content, if I'm looking for the marketing content, I do not go even I do not know the file name.
Yeah,
I just go for the search and
your
navigate and search
search.
for the documents.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's very helpful for me that I can jump in easily to the content. But yes, there if the security is not managed properly, you can see the content which you're not
yeah,
supposed to.
yeah.
So
I
that is
think
what.
I just on that note with the search. I mean, that's how we sort of access our files that are unknown. I mean, for everyone, they're going to be able to access their own team files, their files they're comfortable with. And when they are then looking for that content that they're not sure of, they
Hmm.
are going to go to the search. Where is that content? It may be in the marketing area, it may be in a policy area, it could be in a procedure area. And that's where I suppose having that holistic search across SharePoint has been a wonderful tool for quite some time. But yeah, I find it sort of like a two-step where you sort of access your files that you know,
Hmm.
and we use that search to surface that content that you're not quite sure on that is relevant.
And for file share, when I was using file share in past, network paths, it was really hard because if we are
Hmm.
searching something, like if I need to search a file with specific extension, I do not know the name of the file. So what we
Yeah.
do, we just add the static marks at the start and search it, and it takes sometimes ages based on the content size or to
Mm-hmm.
return the output. So it take too much time. So that is one thing which saved me a lot from searching. So now I would say, because I'm using M365 um, in organization also for my personal content. So it makes
Hmm.
me much easier to navigate to the documents, and also if I'm using this machine on which I'm connected right now, something happens to this machine, I just switch into log into a different machine, and
Yeah.
with the help of OneDrive Sync, everything is available to me, and
Yep.
so
Very much zero downtime
we move to the
in
over.
theory.
So next, now if we talk about migrations, I just want to ask you what if we discuss so much time that migrations are important, moving content to the new systems is important. So how you explain what is migration and why in terms of content, not the moving from one
Yep.
country to other, but
Yeah.
moving the content. So
Yeah.
how you explain it? Why it would be important?
It's yet again another one of those cliche terms that the migration is a process. It's not just copying the files from the file share to SharePoint or Teams. That's one very minor component in it. Pre that, of course, is the bigger component where we actually look at what data's there, what data's relevant, can anything be archived, backup, removed, and go through the process of identifying sort of certain data sets that may be pulled out and extracted. So just on that note, like I sort of break up, sort of fast forwarding and skipping over a few topics, but if you've got your intranet, you've got your corporate side of the intranet, which has like your policies, procedures, forms, and templates, which is available to organizational wide. But
Yeah.
then you've also then got your team sites, which is your day-to-day files that the finance team use, the HR team use. So we need to split those out and identify those data owners because they could be very, very different data owners. I mean, you've got your finance team, and then you maybe have a business management system which has all your documentation in there for your standing operating procedures. Then, I mean, that's a very different data set, which has a different set of permissions. It has different processes around it, and it has different owners and contributors from throughout the business rather than just the finance team. So working through that is the larger aspect of actually what the migration is and identifying any problems and structures that potentially need to be replicated or can be replicated, and any sort of process. I mean, the ultimate goal, sort of rule is we want to get to a process driven output. So starting off on this digital transformation,
Yeah.
moving and identifying these is the first step for the longer term goals, where we can actually get to a process driven business rather than a very reactive file based file share. Hey, my files are in this folder, rather than, well, where are we in the process of X? That's the bigger one. And then in between that and the actual migration is sort of fixing some potential problem files as well. And maybe looking at some hardware. A classic one, although they're being
Yeah.
less and less in the workplace, is office-based scanners that scan the file shares. So once we migrate and get rid of the file shares, well, we now have a place for the scanner to put the files. So identifying potential things like that as well. And then the whole linked files conversation about updating Excel spreadsheets that point to another Excel spreadsheet that have like the N
Yeah.
drive or the T drive in it. Identifying those, and that can be quite a challenge, because often finance accounts and other departments have operated fairly freely with that, because the N drive has always been the N drive. And working through and identifying those critical folders, what needs to be changed for day one, day two, day seven. That's the process of the
Yeah.
file
These are the
migration.
later on benefits.
Correct. So in terms of, well, sorry, these are the benefits.
So, what I would suggest on the migration, I also want to share some points on it, because there are a couple of things challenges. Just like why we change our phone, the mobile phone, because to have the much more advanced configurations, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's supporting the modern tech, modern applications, because if you are using an old phone, you might not avail all the applications and things. And
Mm-hmm.
what how it will impact you, you will miss couple of features, like on smart TV and the old TV. I will say there's a huge difference. Same goes with the file.
Mm-hmm.
People move from physical files to digital files, and if they are having data on the, even if I talk about SharePoint, if they have having data on SharePoint 2007 server or 2010 server, they are managing SharePoint forms, they are managing hardware systems, and they
Mm-hmm.
need to, when they need to upgrade the system, they need to move the because it is specific stage, the themes get obsolete, and they might not uh, getting support from the system, so they need to upgrade the hardware, and then also they have to move the files. So that's this is a process where we need to migrate the content, and there are different ways moving, not only from in Microsoft, but you are moving on content from file share to or different systems to Google or Box or any other systems. But and these are required. These are the today's. If you are living in today's era, these are the requirements to go with these migration, moving the content, because
Mm-hmm.
this will benefit you, as we discussed in the first part, that how it's getting easier for us to access our files on the phone. Even I have all
Mm-hmm.
my old school documents and everything. I scan them because those are physical files, or even any property document or any form of document. I just
Mm-hmm.
have it scanned on my OneDrive. So whenever I went somewhere and they asked me for some specific document, what happened in past, I'm just telling you from daily life. We need to go
Yep.
home, go back to home and bring the document, until unless a physical copy is not required. You have it on your phone. You can show it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Today, no one is taking tickets to the airport. They have their
Yeah.
smart digital print of it.
Yeah, I
So
literally did that last week. I used the boarding pass on my phone rather than printing the ticket. Done. I mean, the benefits are huge. I mean, you've got to maintain that hardware. You've got to maintain that infrastructure. You've got to maintain that support mechanisms as well. I
yeah.
mean, yes, you still have to maintain the support mechanisms for the 365 world. I won't deny that. But it is very much a modern world. It's a lot more secure. It's a lot more flexible as well than the on-prem world as well. I mean,
Yeah.
whether that's the file share or SharePoint, 2000 and X version. It's about enabling that productivity. How can we work better? How can we share better? How do we not duplicate information better? Which, I mean, those are some very high questions, but at least, the cloud world does start to solve some of these questions as well.
So so now let's jump into our main topic on
Yep.
file share migrations. For moving the file share, we are not discussing about the SharePoint specific migration from other digital platforms, but for the
Mhm.
file share migrations. So if I ask you, because whenever we start something, there is some initial processes, some initial phase which is required. So what you suggest is that what is required to plan
Yep.
for migration from file share, and what uh, what you need for it from the system. If I talk about SharePoint, what you need on
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
side, and what you need on the what would be the, in other words, I would say, what would be the prerequisites of doing a file share migration, what is
Hmm.
required.
So I suppose with the starting point of a file migration from a file, say from my experience is really from file shares into 365. Um, I need to inspect the file shares first. So let's look for anything that's potentially over length or very close to being over length, and with how deep it is in folders, and if there's any potential illegal characters or anything that sort of stands out in that way. That can take a little bit of time because potentially, files and folders will have to be renamed and sorted out a little bit. That's the general first step that I take. Um, I mean, this is all sort of from the technical side. From the sort of project side of things, we engage the team. Obviously, we provide them with the lists of files that need to be changed or looked at, and we work closely with them to sort of identify those data sets as well while we're in the file shares. So while we're in amongst the weeds, let's find out as much as we can. And then it's really about, okay, how do we structure this migration? Sometimes we're dealing with several hundred gigabytes in a shared drive, so we may need to split that out. And by split that out, there's several ways we can do that. So the first and most obvious way is, do we need that data that's from 25 years ago? Is that relevant to us today? When should that cutoff period be? Should we only migrate files in the last 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? And this may change, department by department. Some departments might only go, well, we only need, the last six years files. Other ones go, no, we want the last 20 years. Okay, fine, but can they go in an archive or backup and start to sort of weed out those files into their own sort of categories? So you've got active files, you've got archived, you've got deletes, and we don't care. And that sort of whittles it down quite a large amount. I mean, if you've got several hundred gigabytes or terabytes of files, and they've been there forever, you're going to find duplicates. You're going to find all of those ones. So that's another one that we look for, is the duplication of files. So essentially, we look at size, the hashing that it produces, and identify those. And any sort of non SharePointy files, so things like AutoCADs, or computer aided design, that can be a little bit of an issue when it comes to SharePoint. Um, Once that sort of process is well and truly going, and we start to map out as well. So probably three-quarters of the way through that process, we start to look at potentially how can we not ideally structure the file share, but structure it maybe a little bit easier for migration, as in the actual migration tasks themselves. So between migration tasks, you may have subfolders that shouldn't be migrated when the parent folder gets migrated. And one of the ways that I sort of control that is actually with security and permissions. So I remove access to that subfolder for the migration account. That way I can't scan it, I can't access it, and I can't see it. And therefore I just migrate what I need to. And then when I've got that, migration complete, or that migration task, and then we move on to that subfolder specifically. So we can get those exclusions happening, but it's based on permissions on the file shares. That way, we sort of we have a run sheet of what tasks and what happening when roughly, and what needs to happen in between those tasks to make sure that we proceed as planned. That's probably the big and bulk of it. I mean, and that maybe can take a week, or it could take 6 months. It depends on how big, how much, and what rules you set as well. If you want to keep everything and you want to go through everything,
Yeah.
fine, no problem. But if you start to set some limits and some boundaries and sort of box off, well, I mean, don't delete anything. You can always put it on a backup tape or an archive. That's fine.
Yeah.
But do you need everything in SharePoint? And quite often the answer to that is no. We need a set of our data.
Mm. So, so one thing that which I want to share that as you mentioned that at the end, that is it required to everything move to be SharePoint, and this is the area where I have seen the challenges from the customers, because the from customers on the file share, when they are moving to the online system, they are just worried that if their data gets secured, and also how this will work, and they even do not know about their data, because when I work with
Hmm.
couple of customers, when we went to the data on their archive of file shares, and when we navigate to them, and if you might have experienced this thing that they just created old copies of data, bulk even complete drives. They
Yep.
have multiple copies of data for the drives, and they do not even know that when who did this. And recently, I was working with the customer, and when we look for the data, and they do not know that why we have
Yeah.
this data, and do we need it or not, or do not need it. But they need to
Correct.
go from the file share, so they just need to dump their data. And here comes the scenario that if, because there are a couple of things which you need to do as a prerequisites, not only the reporting of the data, that how is the data organized, like you mentioned, the extensions of files, and if those are
Hmm.
supportive
Hmm.
document to the online system. But if you are moving the data, if you have the required licenses, required space on SharePoint, and to your point, that do you need the data? If you need to dump the data, then you have other solutions also available, like
Hmm.
on the blob storage. You can just on the file. I think there you can also move the files, and you can just dump your documents. You can view those documents whenever you go there. That do not
Yeah.
work like SharePoint, but it's an cost-effective way to moving the files from file share, where you do not need to use the data. But if you are using a data, and when we went for the data for the file shares, there are OneDrive file share drives for the users also. So you need to do mapping, for you create the mapping for those users. Permissions, organizations want to move the permissions, but my personal
Hmm.
opinion is that
Hmm.
do not move the permissions if those, because instead of moving permission from those systems, and you might not know that what permission setting were there, so it
Just
better
on
to
that
have it.
note, sorry, Adnan, because that's a really good point. Is in that migration process, if you are bringing your permissions across, you need to go through that process with them as well. Who's in what group? Who has access? Where that needs to be identified, because long story short, you're going to bring over your problems with you. You don't want to bring those problems with you.
Yeah,
You want to take that time and solve those problems, which it can. You want to have this system be beneficial for you.
yeah. So, so that is a, and that could take from a week to a couple of weeks also. And even I was doing a small migration for file share with the customer, and it only have around 15 to 20 OneDrives,
Hmm. Hmm.
user folders, and around 16 to 17 folders for the different shared drives.
Yep.
And you would not believe it has taken over 2 to 3 weeks to just map the folders, because they have nested folders and they want to move. And even they were not aware that how they can organize the data. They are just dumping
Yeah.
data to those drives. And when I shared that how the SharePoint is working, you can create separate document libraries, separate sites for your departments,
Hmm.
and you can have your teams. If you already have Microsoft Teams, you can keep your data on Teams, and you can also
Hmm.
share data. If there's data which you are sharing with the whole company, you can keep it that way. And then comes the a different part which we call as planning for the content. So for the map on the
Yep.
mapping of the content, it has taken too much time, because that is something where they started looking that now we can see our data in much
Yeah.
easier
Now that
way.
they can see, yeah.
So then, because till this time which we are showing up with the migration reports and this stuff, they will not see that how the data will visualize. But
Hmm.
when we
Hmm.
discuss the mapping, and that will also involve the information, SharePoint's information architecture design, and sometimes we do not keep that as important, that if the information design is important or not. But
Yeah.
this is the area where you need to guide your customer that this is
Correct.
important, because sometimes if we are doing the migration job, we might not guide the customer properly. But when you have a clean and neat and clean information architecture and design, that is the point where customer will start getting benefit from the content and can be
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
productive.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, it takes you up to that maturity level. And it's a journey. I mean, everyone keeps saying digital transformation is a journey, but it really is. I mean, no one's expecting you to be perfect on day one, but it is a journey. Let's work out our mappings. Let's work out how we can be better. Let's see
Yeah.
our document sets are. Are we going to get it perfect? No. I mean, and that's fine. It's okay to make mistakes. Um, but as long as you're learning from it and you're correcting course, that's where it becomes a winner because over, I mean, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. You will see those productivity gains within teams, within SharePoint, within
Mm.
people being able to find information quicker, information that they need. And it's relevant and up to date information. Where's the latest file? Is it in this shared drive or is it
Yeah.
in that shared drive? I don't know. Where at least with SharePoint, you can go, right, it's in the depository here, go to the URL here, there it is.
I think
And
uh,
that should be it.
I think we should do a separate topic on the productivity, because
Yeah,
people
productivity
do
is a
not.
big topic.
Yeah, because people do not aware that, because right now we are just doing the migration, but
Yeah,
productivity is the key, how they can get the benefit from their content.
yep.
And the topic, our favorite topic, Copilot, is actually a game changer. Not for the
Well,
organization, even if we self ourselves, it actually changing every day. I'm learning so many things.
oh,
So
same.
I
It's
think we will
it's
set up a
phenomenal.
separate topic on the productivity.
Yeah. Well, just one last thing on that, especially to sort of loop in on the information architecture that you mentioned. Getting that's right, especially I mean, this is step one, the migration. Step two is productivity, and step three is Copilot. You want to have that information architecture to be correct and
Yeah.
flexible right throughout, and getting it right now. Going through those file shares, going through those SharePoint sites, mapping it out, seeing what's there, what we need, and what structure we actually want it in. Do we go with the formal taxonomy? I mean, that's another question. Do we have to address as well? Where is all this going to be accessible from, and how are we going to find it and slice it? And that will set your future up, fantastically.
So next topic is very interesting, which I think which would be interesting for so many others. For file
Mhm.
share migrations, not talking about the other migrations, what tools are available? What tool you would recommend?
Yeah, I personally recommend SPMT, the SharePoint migration tool. It's the old one. I know a lot of people are quite firm with ShareGate, and I've got nothing against ShareGate. It's a great product. It's much more than a migration tool. Let me just make that very clear. And it's a very good tool. Don't get me wrong. Just for my particular customer bases and my needs and skill sets, how it all sort of combines, I'm quite comfortable using SPMT. I've worked with it for quite some time. I know most of its quirks, and I'm happy for that. The other options, I mean, a lot of the informal options, doing robo-copies or PowerShell and all that sort of stuff. No one really does those these days. One of the other ones is the SharePoint migration tool, so Migration Manager. And you've had experience with Migration Manager, haven't you, Adnan?
Yeah, I only did the migration on file share with the file share manager or ShareGate so far,
Yep.
and even
ShareGate's great. I stand behind it. I know Ami Diamond, another MVP from Israel. He's liking that. But yeah, sorry, go.
yeah. So um, I use ShareGate in past, and I highly recommend that tool for not for the SharePoint migration and also the file share, because it will make your life
Mm-hmm.
much easier. If you don't have any experience on that side, even file share manager is also a very simple tool, and I really love. I haven't used. I just did some practice on and the old migration tool, but the new one is much easy. I will say You don't need to
Yeah.
buy the and licenses. And when I did the migration with the help of ShareGate, I experienced one thing. If you have multi-nested folders, it's
Hmm.
really hard on any other system to go to the nth level of the folder and how to organize the data. The thing which we were discussing earlier on the information architecture, if you remember that people started working on the flattened document structure of document libraries. So here
Hmm.
comes the advantage of the ShareGate. I did this for one of the customer that they have around 7 to 8 levels of folders in all
Hmm. Hmm.
like projects, and they have different categories. So
Yep.
we exported that in Excel, and ShareGate just create the metadata for all the folders, and
Yeah.
we created those fields and on the SharePoint, and mapped them with the help of ShareGate. It moved the data as a flattened file structure,
Hmm.
and created all the metadata for those files, and that
Yeah.
was really amazing. But flattened structure also have its own issues, like the threshold issue on the content. But that is
Yep.
today, if we talk about today, it is too much minimized now that user can
Yeah.
access the content. And so my two tools are ShareGate and Migration Manager. So you are
Yep.
is SP and you also recommend.
SPMT. Yeah.
Is SPMT still doing the file share migration or
Yeah.
okay? So I because let me jump into the screen there and
Yep.
see that what's available there. And here, so when you go to your SharePoint, you can go to admin.microsoft.com, and from there you can go to the SharePoint Admin Center. And just before I start there, you should have administrative access on SharePoint for starting this migration. So Daniel, when I have seen this option here, file share,
Yep.
I stopped using this. So earlier we need to go to SPMT for that for the file share migration, but once I have seen it, and
Yep.
so mover, there was a tool purchased by acquired by Microsoft, that mover.io, and its services. I think all most of the services are merged now here,
Yeah.
and that was also a very good tool for the content migrations.
Yep.
So here we are on the file share, and if I go there, you will see a simple screen here, and an option to download the agent. And if you click on the download the agent, it's I believe 8 MB file. Yes,
Yeah.
it's an
It's
8 MB
fairly
file,
small.
and just it takes a few seconds to install on the machine, and you need to install it on the machine where from where the user have access on the file share content. And
Hmm.
we just need to connectivity to connect it with the uh, your SharePoint tenant.
Yeah. On that note, yeah, don't install it on your laptop. My best practice is always I set up a server as close as I can to where the data is and that has the biggest internet uplink. So, for example, the migration that I was doing this week, we had it was all virtual servers, of course, but it was on the same host machine or the second host machine, to be honest. And we have a 1 gig uplink, so I've got 1 gig between the two servers and then 1 gig up, so we can actually read and write at 1 gig a second. I mean, it's a large migration, don't get me wrong, but don't do it on your laptop. Your laptops will fill up.
I totally agree. And but right now in this demo, even I'm not using my personal laptop. I will be doing it from my virtual machine, and this
Yep.
is a practice that you should. There are some minimum requirements, and the best place for understanding it, just enter the file share migration to SharePoint Online. It will take to you to learn.microsoft.com, and here you will see the guidelines from the Microsoft, and also the limits. What are, for example, the file size maximum file size limit is 250 gigabytes, and
Yeah.
there are a couple of for the requirements, so that what would be the system minimum system requirement or recommended system requirement. And normally what happens that if you install it and it start working for you, but sometimes it do not work because and there if there you have endpoint restrictions in your organization, so you need to add those endpoints.
Yeah.
All these details are available on these links prepared. So, and one more thing which I missed earlier on the explaining about the tools. When you are doing the migration from the file share, what are other options available? Even you know that on SharePoint you can drag and drop files, but what
Correct.
happens
Correct.
that way if you are doing the drag and drop, what it will happen? It will not take the date and time creation of the file. When you do the migration with these tools, you will get the usernames if you did the proper mapping, who created the file, who modified the file, and also the, the timestamp of the file. But when you do drag and drop or other options, so you will lose yeah, those important
That
metadata.
metadata. Yeah.
And those are very important to understand that when this file is modified, so you can you will get that how old is data and if you are looking for the correct file. And
Yeah. No,
so
very important aspect that.
yeah, so now we will do a quick demo here on the file share migration, and we will just show you first that how to you can do some couple of scan jobs on your content to verify that if there are any errors and any restrictions. Yesterday, Daniel also shared me a file which was a simple file, but it was not migrating, right, Daniel?
Yep. Correct.
So
That's
so
the
there
a certain file I've come across twice.
so if your migration is went smooth, you haven't learned
Yes.
anything because when you get uh, unknown errors and sometimes you get uh, they get resolved automatically, or you need to move the files, or you open the file and close it, it start working. And
Yep.
because with all my years in migration, I have seen crazy issues even with migration tools also. And
Yeah.
so so here,
It's fun. Yeah.
so I downloaded the agent here, and I already have it. When you install it, it will show you in your system tray. Right now, if you can see that it's showing me disconnected here. Showing me disconnected here, and because it's not connected with any tenant. So I will click on it, and this window will come up when you install it. You need to link it with your tenant, and you also need to map the file share path just to verify that if you have the right access on this on the machine where you are going to install that agent. And this is the agent which will connect your tenant and start migrating files from your local from this machine, from the network drive or shared drive, and moving to the mapped SharePoint location, SharePoint or OneDrive location. I will click on it.
Just while you set that up, Adnan, as well, we can actually have multiple agents as well linked to
Yes.
a tenant. So if you do have different classifications of data, I mean private versus confidential, and they want to be sort of handled that way, or if you have a large data set, we can actually deploy multiple agents to give you that scale. Because you may want to use multiple uplinks as well. I mean, this office goes out with this internet connection, and this office uses that internet connection. So you'll have your two agents there, and they'll handle it through there.
So uh, before I start here, Daniel, I want to ask you: is it ever happened that you are doing any migration or managing SharePoint, and user says that you should not have that this is a very secure data and we can't share this with you, but we need
They
to move it.
try, yeah, they try. Finance departments, HR, they're like, oh, this is very sensitive data. We can't share this. I'm like, okay, we'll stay on the file share. Um, I'll sign the NDAs. I'm happy to conform with policies, procedures, and
Yeah.
security. Don't get me wrong, but I will need access to that data. I mean,
So
there's no two ways about it. Me personally, I don't, but certainly the account that the migration agent
actually,
is
that's why
running
we
under.
sign those documents with them. But still, the end user, the customer, have these questions, and
Yeah.
whenever I work with them, I know that when the data is in SharePoint, even I have the administrative access. I do not have access
Hmm.
on the site. Even normally, IT guys have the administrative access. When the customers ask me that, who can have access to this data, I always say that technically, the admin have access to
Hmm.
data, but if you can see the reports also, you can generate the reports that who access the data, but technically they have the access. They are not accessing the data, or but they get the access because they can
Yeah.
anytime jump into the
We come in over the top of the system.
yeah.
We do. I suppose there are a few mechanisms we can use to address that. So, like just-in-time admins,
One yeah. One
the
thing I have noticed
just-in-time
today.
stuff. Yep.
Have you seen this option?
What's the same?
Advanced management.
No.
I think it's recently pushed, maybe a day before, because I haven't seen this
Oh,
option. And you will see this option here. It's showing in the topic which we were
oh yeah,
discussing.
that's yeah, yeah,
I think this is the most recent update which we are
yep.
going to. And if I show you here, it giving me some option here. The like
Data governance reports.
yes, site level access restrictions. So this could be
Yep.
the allow admin to restrict access. So it could be a possibility that Microsoft have introduced some content to restrict users.
Yeah.
It might be. I'm not sure, but from the headline of the topic, what's included, so it could be a
Yeah,
possibility.
there is. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, your SharePoint administrator class
Mm.
of user will have admin access. They'll be able to add themselves, but we can have conditions around that as well, and certainly reporting. 365 supports all of this. So when I need to go in as an admin, I have to ask for permission, and then that permission's granted, and it's only granted for a certain amount of time, and then it's revoked. So that way, I mean, yes, I still have access to the data, but at least it's controlled, and it needs a second approver.
So so now jumping back to the migration demo here. So this is how I will configure the agent. I will just sign in with my SharePoint admin account here. Just a second. So I will copy the password here, and so it will log in me here, and you will see that it will show me the option that it's linked here, and and will show the connected username here at the top.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you can see it's connected with MS Desktop on the demo tenant, and you can unlink the tenant once after you did the complete the migration. And here you can also verify the file share path. So what I will do, I will just go to my drive here. I did created a shared drive, sharing link here. I will verify. No, need to. I think. Let me copy this folder. So it gives showing me that I have the right, the user which I logged in on this machine have the right access to
Hmm.
that data.
Yep.
So now you can just close this window, and it will show you that it's connected here. It show you connected to the MT migration tool here. And now if you go to the admin center here and click on scan, you can add the path here, and you can upload a CSV file with multiple drive
Mm-hmm.
sources, or you can go for the single source. If I go for the multiple path here, it will give me the option for the CSV template, and this would be a simple text file where you can add the rows one by one, like this one source, two source, second source. So you can share all your network drives here to
Mm-hmm.
verify. And this is only for the scan process. So I will just add the file path here, which I just verified. Add it. Now you can see that once when I edit this that file, it shown me couple of different reports, the total number, the size, volume of the file, different tags here. I will go down and it's showing me the different folders in that migration folder. I can select all of them, and I can run the scan content job here, and it will scan all these files and show me the status on these files. If there are any red flags, it will highlight me here, and we can review those also. It can generate some
Mm-hmm.
warnings. And
The main insight that I use this for is to look at the size of the individual share folders that we're looking at, and any overlength potentials. I mean, this is where that process sort of starts. So we're
yeah,
looking for any length that is over 300 in length, and any other gremlins that it will catch. You know, any illegal characters, and things like that. It's a very introductory scan. I
yeah.
find the scans not consistent between the three processes. So between a scan, a migration scan, and a migration, they all pick up different aspects.
Actually, it happens that even with the migration tools also. You run the
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
pre-migration job, pre-migration runs, and the pre-migration runs in migration tool take too much time. But when you resolve the errors, but at the time of the migration, you will get the errors also. There could be
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
challenges, and you need to do the multiple migration runs on the same content to get
Yep,
all your files.
correct. Very rarely. I mean, it's getting better, but certainly in the past, like you've said, Adnan, you had to run multiple migrations over the same content to make sure you catch everything. Because you do your first scan, you run it, and you find some issues, you fix those. All right, we'll hit it again and find some more, hit them, fix them up. I mean, like that file I sent you today. I mean, that pass scan, the initial scan doesn't pick that up. A hard migration scan, just sort of scanning only rather than migrating, doesn't pick it up either. Only the only way that it fails is SharePoint actually rejects the file.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's not actually the migration tool that actually gets through. SharePoint's rejecting the file and saying, no, I won't accept this file. Unlike, say, a file with a space for a leading character, yet again, the initial scan doesn't pick that up in the migration scan tool. The migration scan, where you just check those that scan only, does not pick that up. And when you go to migrate, it picks it up with SharePoint again because SharePoint doesn't support space leading file names. So you can actually get a lot of files through the scan and right at the very last moment fail.
And one thing here that these scans are important for the migrations. Even I not on the file share, but on the SharePoint site, I usually create an important folder for the count of the
Mm-hmm,
document
mm-hmm.
libraries, which is very important to map that. I also have written a couple of PowerShell scripts for SharePoint Online also, where I do the mapping for the source and destinations to verify
Yep.
that if all the files are moved. It could be a possibility that the count could be different, or count could be increased because
Yeah.
you might have. So there could be chances. So if it get increased, and what happens that even if you are doing the delta migrations, I have experienced this thing that we did the migration, and then we did the delta migration, the count was increased, and we were surprised that we haven't select all the required options,
Yeah.
most suitable options. When we reviewed the options, and because that is area where which if a document library have over 30,000 files, now you need to review all the file names, and you come to know that there are files which are not showing up on the source. What
Yeah.
what happened? The users have deleted those files, and we'd already moved the files in
Yeah.
the initial phase of the migration to the destination. So, and
Yep.
even you have mentioned this on your on the business specification documents that you do not have to move any of the file, delete any of the files, but they still do it.
Yeah. I refuse to do Delta migrations these days. They're not worth the potential trouble. Um, as soon as I, mean, I won't generalize too much, but as soon as they've discovered the end users have discovered that done the first sync into SharePoint, they then go in and they clean everything up. Now, what that means is A, they go into the file share and start bulk moving things, and B, they then go into SharePoint and bulk move things there that are different to what's on the file share. So by the time I come around and I do the Delta, it's all out of whack. The files are duplicates. There's ones that are there that aren't meant
Oh,
to. There goes, well, we moved these files out of there yesterday. It's like, well, I did a sync the day before. So I just don't bother now with the Delta anymore. If you've got a decent enough internet connection, and we've planned it out right, you'll get your files, and we're not doing the Delta. It's just too risky on my end.
I,
It's too complicated.
and even if you have files in terabytes, even not the
Yeah.
size, the number of files, because some like customer do not understand that
Yep.
what is the impact of number of files
Number of
in
files is
instead of size.
huge.
Yeah, so delta will take too much time if you are going. So I did create a practice for myself that I will just check that what are the I just run created few PowerShell reports, and ShareGate also generate few reports for the inventory of all the files, and you
Hmm.
select all the sites and documents, and I will just check that after the migration how many files were moved migrated. But then the killing point is that on the delta sync, if there are 400 document libraries or document locations that got modified, and there's one 5 in 1 and 2 in 1 and 3 in 1 that in
Hmm.
chunks, that actually kills you because it will take
Yeah.
too much time. Even you have to create migration batches, but if you use those migration batches, it will take too much time because it will verify all the files and take
Correct.
hours
It
and
can't
hours.
just verify what's changed. It has to find out what has changed and
Yeah.
go through and verify every individual file. Yeah,
So yeah,
it's a pain, and that's why I don't bother with the deltas anymore.
yeah, it's good to know. I haven't heard this from feedback from anyone before, so
Yep.
it's a good feedback
I
for
haven't
me
done it for
also.
10 years.
I
They're
will
just
use
too
it.
painful.
I will use it with my customers that
Yeah, you use it. Daniel
we will
doesn't
do
do
it.
them, so we're not doing them.
This is the benefit which we get from the by sitting in different parts of the world, from the
Mm,
experience from each other. So
no, for sure.
we have run the scans. Scans are not important for the migrations, but it's for you to understand that what is lying on that content, and if there is
Hmm.
anything, you can just remove it. Right now, we don't have any errors here because these are very simple Word files I generated with the help of Copilot. And if I go to the migrations here, so here you can add the migration task. You can have single migration. You can just share the source of the migration. Like this, I can map it, and with here I will share the site URL. It's giving me the options to move a Microsoft Team, SharePoint, and OneDrive. For the team, it's also basically technically the backend is a SharePoint site which require URL, and I will go for the SharePoint here and select a document lab site name. This is the site which I have created for this demo, and now I'm back here, and so here you will see the option. I have added the site URL, and it will show me the document libraries on that site.
Hmm.
And make sure that if even you are an admin user, you have access to that site. Just checking a little time.
I noticed it was also slow over the weekend at this particular section as well.
Yeah, it should start showing up in the document libraries listing here. Things could happen on live demos. Sometimes get slowed down. So instead of going to this one, because this is pretty straight, yeah, you are mapping one-on-one to the file source and destination, and but for the bulk migrations, that moving data from OneDrive users and different, you need to go for the bulk migration. Similar way, you can also select a OneDrive or team. But if I go back here, the first step for the bulk migration, I need to upload a CSV file, and you will now ask that what will be the format of that CSV file. For that, we go next, and here it gives me the option to for the sample. There are a couple of reference links are also available. I will do this one. This will take me to the site here and show me the different details on it. Okay, what type of file format is required. Here you can see that it's showing me the source URLs are listed here, and then destinations, and at the next it's showing me document libraries, and then we can have nested folders where you are planning to move the content, because also for the OneDrive you might move file share data to a specific folder, not to the OneDrive folder directly. So you can create those, and here's the schema for the file share. That these are the headings here: file share path, SharePoint site path, and this is the path which will be used for Microsoft Team and also for OneDrive, and then doc library and doc library folder. So I already have created a file, and make sure that the files are mapped properly. This is a CSV file, and if you see, it have the same for headings, and I have created the folders here, and these are the OneDrive users for my demo tenant, and this is a SharePoint site. SharePoint site, migrating to the SharePoint site, and I am also creating a folder there. So this would be the format which you are seeing on the screen here for the bulk migration. You can add all your entries here, which you are planning to move from that specific agent, from one specific agent. So now I will upload that file. So then, is it the same process for the which you use?
Yes. Well, yes. When I do the bulk tasks, yes. Sometimes I also add individual ones. You know, those special use cases as well. That it's just single by single. But generally, once we've gone through that mapping process, out spits, you know, through a PowerShell script that I've got a file that I can use to bulk import, and have the all those folders come in rather than just me having to add one by one. But there may be sometimes, you know, we use by case where something has failed, or there's a very specific folder that needs to come in. That's when I'll do the one by one scenario.
Okay, so I have uploaded the file, migration file here, and if there are any errors, it will show me up here. Show me here that you need the file is not correct in proper format here. So everything good here, and I will select it here. So I can run the scan now, or I can run the scan later, and sorry, run the file now, or can do the scanning on it further again, like I did on the previous step. And it also shows couple of other properties. I need to select the agents here for this specific migration job. So if I have multiple agents, I can select them, and here are the term perform scan only, or you can select create the migration. For example, you are planning for a migration over the weekend, or over the coming Monday. So, but you can create your pre-configurations before that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Select all the jobs here, and this is the time. which is required for delta syncs. So this is a good one which I haven't seen on other migration tools. Maybe they are now providing with the time that we can select in any specific time, start date and end date, and it will just copy the data and uh, replace the files from those specific dates. Because no, what happens in migration tools, they verify the changes. If the date is there's a new date in the source, it will override the file. But here in this case, it will override all the files from that specific date. And same, we need to have Microsoft Intro ID lookup. I just selected this one, and I'm just going with the default. And this user mapping is also if you are moving the permissions. But I would not
Yeah.
recommend this because what yeah, you can use it for usernames, but I would not recommend to copy the permissions here.
Yeah.
Option for
The
the
permissions is a whole, for lack
is
of
the
a better word,
this
mess
one.
when it comes into SharePoint.
Yeah, this option, preserve the
Yeah, the
permission.
preserve. Yeah.
So I
I
will just
highly recommend not bringing them across.
so I think what I'm missing here. Okay, I need to add a task name here. Mm. So here you can identify, you can create the batches for based on the content size. Like Daniel mentioned, that it could be a possibility that you are migrating one source from one agent, so you can just create the task accordingly, and you'll go on to
Hmm.
it. So I will just run it, and it will create all the tasks based on the my bulk migration here, and it will take a few minutes, and you will see the update here. It will be connecting the agent, and if I go to this one agents, it's showing me the agent here, and the agent is enabled. But once the task is started running, it will also be in running stage here.
Yeah. Just on that note, Adnan, can you just click on the agent there for me? I just want to point out the working folder. So the working
Yeah,
folder is yeah. If you click on the
this
line
one.
item, yeah. So up there, it's got the working folder. So that's where SPMT will generate the log files and everything in, but it will also place in a packaged version of your files as well. So it will take a copy of your file share, package it up a certain way, and then send it up and into SharePoint. So if you don't have enough hard drive space, that's
Mm,
where you'll start to run into problems. And it's also important to clear this out too once you finish the migration to ensure that any files that were
mm.
left behind have gone.
Yeah, that's very important point, and that's why I mentioned the minimum requirements for the system for the file share migration. So these are the things which you need to be careful. And Daniel, you also mentioned at the start earlier, and then when we started this demo, that do not install it on your laptops,
Yeah,
your personal machines, which turned off or which you can turn off. It's always done it on servers or virtual machines which are running continuously, so that migration job do not get killed.
yeah,
Because
the ideal scenario is certainly to have it in a server environment where we can have that stability.
yeah, is it? Let me check. What is the status now on the migration? So,
Based on the logs, it's looking good,
yeah,
from what I can see.
one is complete and three is in process. And if I go to agent, it also is showing running here. And one thing is that I can click any of the migration job here, and it will show me the summary report of it. And we can also review the logs here for each of the. If I click for example, this one is complete. I will see all the details here for this migration job. Luckily, it do not show the number of files shown on this screen here. But if you click on the file share here, you will see that how much content is moved and how many files are migrated here, and any scan issues and will be listed on here. And if you see here, these are the different. I already have opened the OneDrive for the 3 users here. not showing any file here, right? When I just the migration is complete, I believe. So migration for the site is pending, but for the users is completed. So let me check. I will just refresh the page here.
Ah,
So you can see that the files have been copied here, and you can also see it's showing the dates of the files, March to Feb 16. So it taking the timestamp, and because I am an admin user on this machine, I logged in. So that's why it's just showing me the built-in admin here, and
mhm.
showing the all the details here for the files for other users also. And here on the SharePoint drive, I created a folder on that bulk sheet. So it created the folder and copied all the files on that folder. And one thing is there, for the file share migration, it always copy, it do not move the files. So there are
Yeah,
different
it's
in,
always a copy.
yeah, because sometimes users, because when I was working with a customer who were very keen about their content, even they were not willing to share the content.
Hmm,
And
hmm.
I mentioned that if I am doing the migration, I need the access either way.
Yep.
So and uh, when we did the migration, they were worried that if the migration tool, they were not willing to install the agent on the machine, because they
Hmm,
were worrying that it might damage their existing file. I mentioned that it will not make any changes
hmm.
on your machine, and we are not
Yep.
using any custom agent or any custom script for it. It's a Microsoft recommended tool available on their Microsoft Admin Center, and you just need to install it, and it will just copy the files from your system. It will not take any modify any permissions,
Hmm,
and make
hmm.
any changes on your machine. But when you
Yeah.
do migration with the ShareGate or other tools, they make some changes, like for accessing the content, the tool automatically gives themselves permissions for migrating the
Yep.
content. So it's not in case of the migration manager. So we have seen that the migration was quite simple here. It's not always this simple when you are doing the customer migrations, but for demos it went
Can
simple.
be a bit more complicated, but it's the basic concept. This is the heart of the concept of how the migrations happen.
Yeah. So now, earlier the documents were not searchable, but now the documents are in OneDrive, and once the indexing is complete, these all documents will be searchable, and you can access it on your devices with the help on OneDrive and also on SharePoint, and you can easily share it with your customers or within your organization, and you can also sync it. So this is one thing. If you still want to use the file share, file explorer, you can sync the file,
Yeah.
and it will you can access it on the file explorer also. So these are the topics, and I think we are very much discussed on the delta sync also.
The Delta.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are not
I don't
interested in
bother.
delta sync,
No, not a fan.
and we just discussed the delta sync difference, that on file share you can provide and start and end date, and it will copy the files, override the files from that
Mhm.
specific period. So you need to be
Yep.
very and do not add too much gap for the delta sync, because I have experienced this thing that we did the migration and we did the delta sync after 6 months, and it
Mm.
again become a whole new migration.
Yeah, 6 months is way too long between
Yeah.
deltas. It's yeah, it's
They
a
are
new
not,
migration.
yeah, because when we did the migration, they were not willing to move the system. They mentioned that we
Hmm.
need to wait, and so whenever you do the migration, make sure that Delta would be in within 4 to 5 days,
Yeah,
not
days.
more than
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And Daniel, you mentioned that you are not a fan of Delta.
No, no. I just treat every Delta as a single migration now. I don't offer the Delta option. I find it's just too complicated. There's too many things that go wrong. The end users tend to bulk move things between deltas, and it just becomes, like you said, a whole new migration. Even though it was meant to be a delta, it's just a whole new migration. It takes just as long. There's just as many problems, if not more.
And so this is from for today, that on the migration highlights, how we can do the file share migration with the and we do not need a license tool for it, which we have seen. And that's from today. And if you want to reach out to us, you can reach out to MS Tech Talk on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and also the mstechtalk.com. And Daniel, if you want to share your contact details to reach out to you.
Yeah, no problem. I suppose the two main ones is www.danielbrown.id.au, which is my very forgotten and neglected blog. But I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I mean, find me on LinkedIn. Look for Adelaide SharePoint or Adelaide Microsoft Copilot, and you'll definitely find Daniel Brown on there.
Sure. And we are slightly over time on it now, but we end the stream here, and we will coming back by next week, hopefully, for a new topic on it. Maybe Daniel will be joining us again for the future
Maybe.
event. Yeah.
Thank you for
Take,
having me. It's been great.
yeah. And this way we will be sharing, we have been working in industry, and we will be sharing our experience, how we do things. And if you have a different way of doing the same thing, just reach out to us and share your thoughts, and we can do another session with those, that because this is where we can improve our learning, and also for the
Mm-hmm.
audience.
No,
Okay.
definitely. Very much so.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
always keep learning. Thank you.
So I will end the stream now.